Hi everyone, welcome to the brand new episode of my project analysis series, and today I'll be running through Thomson Reserve. So Thomson Reserve, definitely one of the highly anticipated projects, and it is definitely the blockbuster of this year. So many people are talking about this project, even agents itself, clients, my own direct clients, my new clients, all asking about Thomson Reserve. So honestly, for Thomson Reserve, it is definitely going to be one of the pent-up demand projects, and it is something that we also have to take note of in terms of the price points that we are going into for this particular project. Without further ado, I'll just run through a little bit on the location itself, just like we always do. Okay, so first thing first, it is released at 1268 units on a land size of 504,000 square feet. To be honest, for this en-bloc site, it is really quite big, and it is also by a renowned developer, UOL. In terms of location-wise, if you can see, we are just at the MRT station and we are within 1 kilometer from Ai Tong Primary School. So this is one of the main few factors that most of the Singaporeans will be very keen in, like when they come into a certain location. Number one criteria definitely is the MRT. Number two is also the primary school. So these are some factors that actually help you to push up a lot of prices going forward. And also because in the whole Thomson area, if you understand this location, it is very undersupplied in terms of the private condos as well. So without further ado, let's go straight into the content for Thomson Reserve. First thing first, why is everyone waiting for Thomson Reserve? What I just mentioned in terms of the location there, it is very undersupplied in terms of the condos. So the last project was Thomson Impressions, which is like about 6 years ago, TOP in around 2019, and then now is Thomson Reserve. So the other one would be the right unit to enter, because in Thomson Reserve, if we see this particular project, after so many years without any launch there, definitely there will be a very strong hype in that location itself. So we have to be very careful. The right unit we go in based on our queue number, because a lot of people, when they are waiting for this particular project and they want to get a unit, sometimes we might buy in a position that is not so advantageous to us going forward. And of course, the last but not least is the opportunities as compared to Thomson Reserve. So why I say about the opportunities is because if today, for example, your queue number is not so ideal and you end up maybe at a 3000 or 3001 PSF, there might be a chance that you can consider some of the outskirt markets or the RCR markets, which is similar at Thomson Reserve, to really get a better unit. So later we will discuss more into this, and I can show you some of the data and analysis of some projects that also perform quite good in terms of the difference pricing between RCR and CCR locations. So for this particular project, we don't have so much concerns, because if you saw all my analysis videos, most of the time we always talk about what problems, what concerns we have for our project. But for Thomson Reserve, to be honest, is actually quite a good project and we cannot spot too many. But of course, that being said, every time along the way when we analyze a project, there will be definitely some issues that we need to be careful of. For example, the specific layout. Let's say today, if you are going into a 2-bedroom, you have to understand what is the different layout. For example, a 2-bedroom with a galley kitchen versus a 2-bedroom with a closed concept kitchen. Which one suits you more? Which one is better? Because when you go into this area and you want to pay top dollars for this project, definitely you also want to have something better, am I right? And one of the most important things is that for hot projects, normally there's a very hot demand, and when this hot demand comes, definitely there'll be a point that we will pay a bit on a higher price. So if we look, for example, like J Gateway, on the first day that it was launched, it was fully sold. And you can see that some of the units in J Gateway actually don't make much money. So we have to understand clearly whether or not today, if we are going into a certain project, what are some of the price points that we want to avoid so that we can still exit safely going forward. And later, I'll go through some of the analysis to know that even though this project is hot, but we also have to be very careful of the purchase, because we don't want to end up in a disadvantaged position when we want to offload in future. Okay, so before I carry on, this is my WhatsApp and this is my Telegram community. Do join and scan if you have any questions you want to ask me regarding the previous launches or the previous projects that I have done, so that you can have a clearer understanding on what are the unit types or layouts that you should be considering in today's market. Okay, so why is everyone waiting for Thomson Reserve? Definitely, like I said just now, because in the last 6 years, there isn't a single launch in that location itself. The last one that we saw was Thomson Impression, which is 2019 TOP, and till date, there is nothing there. So definitely, this is going to be a pent-up demand for this project itself. But what we want to really understand is what happens when there's very little supply or no supply in that location itself. Because if you see the whole Thomson area, there's only a couple of projects, and this amount of supply, it isn't enough to cover the whole population in that location. That is why we have a very strong demand in terms of the people looking at this project to begin with. So first thing first, Thomson Reserve, not much condo. Second thing, Thomson Reserve is on a very big land size, which is very rare in that location itself. But the key thing that we want to note is that in the last 6 years, there isn't a single new condo in Thomson area at all. When you have a situation like this, there is a very high chance that the resale buyer will still end up going into the resale there because they don't have other options. So now we want to understand, how does this undersupply impact you in terms of the prices? First example we look at is Panorama. You can see that they have 274 profitable transactions, highest at 1.5 million profit and 0 unprofitable transactions. So in Panorama area, if you know, it's in Ang Mo Kio, and the next launch in Ang Mo Kio area is actually Amor Residence, which you can also see that because there's this gap of timeline that wasn't any new launch in that area, Amor Residences now is also starting to make some profits in terms of their purchase. We look now at the prices that it has been transacted. The first owner bought at 1.21, sold at 1.31, and then now sold at 2.1 million. So you can see that this profit is 790,000 just for a resale owner as well. Same for this example, you can see from 1.2 to 1.51 to 2.07, which makes 560,000 profit. So the key thing to note that in this location, when you have a very undersupply of units or condos in the area, you will see a very high chance in terms of the profit, even as a resale owner. And next example we look at is Bishan Loft. You can see the amount of profitable transactions is 225, highest at 2 million, and 0 unprofitable transactions. So in the same location as well, when there's undersupply, you can see that the trend is always similar, that they have always a very high amount of profits going forward. And now we look at the prices. From 928 to 1.325, they made 397,000 profit. And also from this one, 1.07 to 1.98, 910,000 profit. So in these two examples, Panorama and Bishan Loft, we can see clearly that when you are in a location that has very little supply of units, you can stand to have a very good profit going forward. And the last example that I'm going to share with you now is Jadescape. So why I use Jadescape is because Jadescape is one of the newest condo in the location and is nearer to Thomson Reserve, which is a very good comparison that we can use between these two locations. We can also see from Jadescape, they have 282 profitable transactions, and the highest was scary, 4.3 million, with 0 unprofitable transactions as well. So now we see the prices again, 414,000, 848,000 profit from the resale. These are all resale transactions that has still made money in that certain location. So the key thing that we want to highlight in these three examples is to tell you that all projects that is in a location that is under supply, you stand to make a lot of profits even in the resale market. So the next question is, who are the buyers that's buying into Thomson Reserve? I believe this is one of the questions that we want to understand, and also we want to know why these prices are able to achieve this kind of profits for these particular projects. So just now when I was sharing about Jadescape, the average price for a 5-bed is around $4 to $5 million, and the penthouse is even sold at $10 million. So the question is, when you have this kind of money, why don't I consider a landed in the area? Because I'm going to pay $5 million, $4 million. Why don't I go for a freehold landed? So why am I sharing this is because a lot of buyers are asking me, hey Dylan, today if I go into Jadescape and I pay $4 or $5 million, how am I going to exit? Who am I going to sell to going forward in terms of this kind of high price range property? Because the Thomson freehold landed will cost you around $4 million for a freehold land. So why do I need to go into a condo when I can buy a freehold? I believe that is one of the questions that a lot of buyers are also thinking, why should we be going into a condo when we can get a landed? So later we will understand why this thing is happening and how do we go about with this situation in Thomson Reserve. So we want to dive deep to also understand why buyers are going to a condo instead of a landed. So we look at Jadescape for example. If we can see the highest profit is 4.35 million and the average profit is 458,000. But the whole idea of this is to really understand the first thing, which is the private owners. Why I want to talk about these private owners is because I want to show you that today the buyers that are coming into Jadescape are private owners. And another point to highlight is the PR buyers. You can see that the PR percentage of almost 16% in Jadescape is actually quite high. So why I want to talk about these PR buyers is because PR buyers are not able to buy a landed. They are able to buy, it's just that they have to go through a longer process and a harder process to get the approval. So in this process, they might be just thinking, maybe I should just get a condo instead because it's a bit troublesome and it may or may not be approved. So the key thing that we want to understand over here, PR buyers not able to go in, landed easily. That's why they turn to condo. Secondly, most of the buyers are private owners and not like what we always mention, targeting on the HDB upgraders. So now we look at Jadescape as an example. Typically, the 5-bedroom over here are all sold close to $5 million and their profit can go as high as 1.77 million. So the key thing I want to highlight to you over here is these two units, 1146 and 2046. So why I want to use these two units is because you can see that 11th floor is bought at 4.968 while the 20th floor is only bought at 4.9 million. The question is, how come this buyer is willing to pay another 68,000 more for a lower floor unit? Because in that location, even if you go to Property Guru and search right now, you can only see maybe there's only 1 or 2 listings of a 5-bed over there. And so buyers in this location, right, normally what they do is when they go to a certain project, they find a unit that they like. They may not straight away offer, but they want to go and search around the surroundings. And so in this location, when you have undersupply of 5-bedroom units and you search for 6 months, 9 months, you might still come back buying the same unit and at a higher price. This is how it performs over at locations when there's an undersupply of units in that area itself. So I just want to emphasize one thing in Thomson Reserve is that today when you go into Thomson Reserve, there will be something that you have to be very careful of, which is the unit that you are looking into. Why I say that? Because in Jadescape itself, if you see that 0640 versus 1146, first one 0640 profit 1.43, 1146 profit at 1.77, and this is about a 340,000 difference. But you can see in terms of their purchase price that they go in is probably around 200,000 difference. So the key thing to understand is that today when you go into this unit and this unit, there is a price difference, which is what I want to emphasize on Thomson Reserve, that there is a chance that you might be going into the wrong unit at the wrong pricing. So even though the project is a very good project, very hot project, you also have to be very careful when you enter into the project. What is the entry price that you're looking into? Because this entry price will definitely determine your profit and how you exit in future, which I will share with you more in detail. Now we look at 2 different options that you are available to. If today you have $5 million, which one will you go for? First one, you go for Jadescape, which is a 3-year-old condo, 5-bedroom, 2099 square feet with minimum renovation. Second one, you can go for a freehold indoor terrace, land size around 1,008, original condition with rebuilt or A&A, estimate to cost about $500 to $1 million. So for the indoor terrace, if you were to do an A&A of 500,000, it is just mostly the interior. If you really want to rebuild, I believe the cost may not even be just $1 million. It can be maybe 1.5 to 2 million. So the first thing we want to take note is the outlay of your cash portion. If we look at Jadescape at a 5 million condo price, the outlay of 30%, you're looking at 1.5 million. But if you look at an indoor terrace, at the same amount, 5 million, your outlay is 1.5 million and adding in another 1.5 million just for your reno. So the first thing we want to talk about is that your outlay is much higher in terms of a freehold indoor terrace. Second thing we have to take note is that, let's say for example today you decided to still go for the indoor terrace, which honestly it makes more sense also because it is not a bad choice. But the only thing you have to think very clearly is that if you were to go into a landed like this, first thing first, your down payment is 1.5 million. Second thing, you have additional cost of your reno, which is also another 1.5 million. Honestly, if you can afford, definitely it's okay. But a lot of times, some circumstances doesn't allow for everybody. So for example, today, if you were to go into this landed, you have to pay a down payment, you have to pay a reno. You have to also consider when your monthly installment kicks in, you don't have a place to stay, you still have to rent a place if you don't have. So you have to count your cost on a monthly basis. Your monthly installment, your rental cost, your renovation cost, all these costs will come in, and it's something that not many people can easily afford to go in. That's why end of the day, we can see there's a lot of demand still for the big size 5-bedroom condos in a similar location. But ultimately, I just want to show that people in this location can afford this price range and are willing to pay this price range for a certain project because of the unnecessary cost that they might encounter if they go into a freehold landed. So for the next section, I'll be talking about identifying the right unit in Thomson Reserve. In this part, we'll be talking about 2 things. First thing is the layout that always affects the property. Second thing we're talking about is the entry price, which is one of the biggest concern I have in this project itself. So now we look at the first example, Skyview and Sky Habitat. So why I use this example is because these two are side by side and it's a very good location beside Bishan MRT. Both projects are launched in 2012 and 2013, and they are both by CapitaLand. So the key thing in choosing a certain project in a certain location is really the layout. Because today, if you have a wrong layout, it might cost you a lot when you want to sell going forward, which I will explain to you more later in terms of the floor plan. And if we look back at Thomson Reserve, we cannot say like, for example, because Thomson Reserve is a very good location, so we just buy anything that we like and we just don't bother about anything. If the layout is wrong, even at the best location, you still stand to lose money when you want to exit going forward. Just like Sky Habitat. Later we will run through and I'll explain to you more. But for example, today, if you go into Thomson Reserve, you also have to be very careful. What are the layouts that you are looking into? But honestly, for Thomson Reserve, it shouldn't be a very lousy layout. It is only whether is it a good layout versus a better layout. If today you're looking at a 2-bedroom, for example, a 2-bedroom with a galley kitchen or a 2-bedroom with an enclosed kitchen, which one has more demand going forward? Or even if you look at another situation, a conventional 2-bed with windows in the toilet versus a dumbbell layout 2-bed, which one is better in that location that you can exit easier in future if you were to buy Thomson Reserve? So if today you want to go into Thomson Reserve and you want to pay so much more, it is better to get the best unit so that you have a very good chance that you can exit going forward as well. So now we look at Sky Habitat. You can see very clearly Sky Habitat has 28 unprofitable transactions and the highest is at 685,000. While if we look at Skyview, all of them are profitable transactions. So bear in mind, we are just taking transactions from 2013 to 2018. Why? Is because if we take any transactions that is up till today, it will not be super accurate because a lot of projects are performing so much better after the COVID period itself. Like for example, Thomson Grand, when it was launched during the first month, they only sold about 6% of their total units, but today it still performed very well. Why? Because for those that wants to go into like Thomson Impression or Thomson Tree, when they search finish there and they have not much choices, the only choice they have is end up with Thomson Grand, even though the layout is not so ideal. So in times when the supply is more than demand, when your layout is not so good, you will suffer very badly in terms of the prices. But when you look at another situation, when your demand is more than your supply, even if you're in a not so good layout, you will still suffer, but you suffer not as much. So we want to see now what are the layouts that we should be avoiding so that you can be very careful. So we look at these two layouts, Sky Habitat versus Skyview. You can see this Sky Habitat is 800 plus square feet. So we look through Sky Habitat layouts first. First thing first, we have open concept kitchen. Secondly, which is one of the important things, is they have a powder room over here. These two powder room. Honestly, for a 2-bedroom to have a powder room, it makes a bit no sense. Why? Because generally, most of the 2-bedroom comes with 2 proper baths, but a powder room doesn't really give you much of a space in terms of a shower facility. But the most critical one is the balcony area. You can see in these two layouts, all the balcony areas are odd shape. Why they're doing odd shape is because they want to match the outlook of the property itself. But in Skyview, we can see clearly they have 2 proper baths. They even have a walk-in wardrobe, enclosed kitchen, and proper living dining area. So you can see in terms of these two layouts and 2 projects side by side, definitely as a buyer or an own stay buyer, you will want to go into this layout. But the biggest issue in Skyview is just that this second bedroom will only be able to put a single bed. So in comparison with Thomson Reserve, we might not see something over here, this kind of layout, but definitely we will see something like that, or maybe even a better one. So we have to be very clear, in Thomson Reserve, if we were to see a better layout, how do we know whether is it better and how will it benefit us in terms of the sales in future? So when the layout is out, then I'll be able to choose for you to know which one is better and which one should you be going in to take advantage of this layout so that you can exit better as well. So before we carry on, this is my WhatsApp and this is my Telegram community. Please join and scan if you have any questions you want to ask me. So before I carry on, I just want to share that it's not about the project that we want to buy. It is more important to understand what is the finances that we are looking into so that we are very comfortable with the purchase going forward. For example, like today, if you go into Thomson Reserve and you have a 2.5 million budget, that maybe can only get you a 2+ study by the time it's your turn. And if there's another location that you can get a 3-bed, which one should you be going for? So first thing first, we have to understand what is your finances. What is the number that you can afford up to comfortably? And second thing is to understand, based on the finances, where are you going into? Which projects are you looking at? For example, you're looking at number 1, Thomson Reserve as your priority choice. If I cannot get Thomson Reserve, then what is next? So we can also understand what is the project that is upcoming in the next 6 to 9 months or the current project that is being launched so that you have a better comparison between Thomson Reserve and other projects as well. The next part that we want to talk about is the entry price, the price gap of RCR versus CCR. Why? Because Thomson Reserve is in the RCR region and today in the market, there is actually some units in the CCR region that is actually at a very good price that we can consider. And I have also mentioned this many times in my other videos as well. Do take a look and understand what are some of the projects that you can go into today so that you don't have to pay an additional price in terms of the overall market situation. First thing first, we look at these two comparisons, Leedon Green versus Woodleigh Residences. Leedon Green is in CCR, Woodleigh Residences is in RCR. So you can see clearly, number one, their purchase price bought at the same price, but their profits difference are 50 to 60% in terms of the ROI for Leedon Green, meaning to say that Leedon Green performed a lot more better in this location or in this time frame. So a lot of people ask me, Leedon Green is a freehold, so definitely you buy, it's a very good price, but we want to understand one thing. For a freehold property, normally the 2-bedroom really don't perform very well because it is not something that people like and there's not much of a demand for it in the market itself. So now we see the same Leedon Green example comparing to one per bank in the RCR location. We can see clearly Leedon Green bought 2003, while one per bank bought even higher at 2004 PSF. The ROI is also much higher for Leedon Green. So today, if you go into a situation where you see that the CCR property is lower than the RCR property, naturally you should buy the CCR because it is so much cheaper, and this gap will help you to profit just by looking at this example as well. So now we look at the bigger units that's being transacted, the Leedon Green 4-bed versus the Woodleigh 4-bed. So this is another different location that we are comparing between the RCR and the CCR. So we can see the price gap between both is 7.8%, means that Leedon Green bought 7.8% higher than Woodleigh Residences. So in this situation, is it fair? Will it perform better? The only way to know is we look at the performance of it. We can see clearly the ROI for Leedon Green is still at 122%, while Woodleigh Residences is only at 64%. So the question here is that today, if you were to go into Thomson Reserve, whether or not would you be buying at the higher price? If we can see Woodleigh Residences, to be honest, we picked out the higher prices in Woodleigh Residences. Why? Because a lot of people say that we cherry pick the data, and today we purposely pick the higher one that is still making a profit. In Woodleigh Residences itself, if you see, there are still transactions that is at 1007 PSF, 1008 PSF that still profit, but we purposely picked out the highest transaction so that we know what is the gap difference between the CCR and the RCR at that point of time. And that being said, it still profit at 122% in terms of the ROI. So the thing that we want to highlight to you here is that if today you go into Thomson Reserve and that there is a very huge price gap, for example, you look at 3000 PSF versus a CCR property that is maybe a 10% or 20% lower in terms of the PSF, that is an opportunity that you might consider. Why I want to highlight this to you is because a lot of people going for Thomson Reserve definitely will have a situation that they feel that they have been there for so long, they've been queuing for so long, and they want to get a unit. But sometimes we need to be calm and think whether or not the unit that we are going to, does it make sense if we really go into this unit when there are so many opportunities around still in the current market? So what are the other options that are available in the current market? We can look straight away at this table. There is two different options. One, Oriel, 2-bedroom at 2008 PSF versus Union Square, 3-bedroom, 2006 PSF. We can see these two projects that are much lower in terms of the price range compared to Thomson Reserve if it sells at 3000. Of course, that being said, if let's say for example you can get a unit at Thomson Reserve at maybe 25, 26 or 27, definitely you should go ahead because it's still a very good buy. But the question is, if today you have hit a high of maybe say 3001, 3002 PSF, then you might want to consider other options. This is only two options that we pluck out. Of course, there are still a lot of other options that you have to carefully analyze and see whether is it worth going in. But the key thing I want to highlight to you is that when at this point of time, what is your next move? You have to be very clear. Because for example, today, maybe like in the River Valley area, Promenade Peak or Zion Grand, there's still prices going at slightly below and above 3000 PSF, which makes sense if today you were to go into Thomson Reserve at 3002, because these projects at River Valley is also at the very fringe of the CCR area, which is in the very prime location that is worth considering based on the 3000 plus price range. So for example, today, the recent unit at Promenade Peak, the 4-bedroom is sold at 4.9 million. While if you go to Thomson Reserve, there is a very high chance, and I'm very sure that it will hit 5 million. At that point in time, should I be going for Promenade Peak 4.9 million, or should I be going for Thomson Reserve at 5 million. Of course, we don't know whether the unit will still be available then, but what I'm saying is that if today you know that you're going in at this price of maybe 5 over million, then should you be exploring other options that makes more sense in terms of this purchase? This is something that you really have to think about. Now we look at another example, which is the price gap between RCR versus OCR. So RCR, Thomson Reserve area, versus OCR, the outskirts area, for example, Clementi, Tampines, and all these locations. So the first thing we look at is Clavon 4-bed versus Woodleigh Residences 4-bed. You can see first thing that I want to show you is the price gap. The price gap is 45% difference for Clavon versus Woodleigh. And you can see in terms of the profits, Woodleigh made 400 over 1,000, while Clavon can go up to 700 over 1,000. So the key thing to note over here, the price gap that Clavon bought lower by 45%. Next example that I want to show you, Whistler Grand versus Avenue South. Both are 3-bed. You can see Whistler Grand profit about 600 to 700,000, while Avenue South profit about 2 to 300,000. But the key thing also over here is the 47% price gap. Means to say that today, in the OCR market, at that point of time, there were projects comparing from RCR to OCR, there was a gap of 45 to 47%. So looking at Thomson Reserve, if today, for example, you go into Thomson Reserve again and then you see that the price is 3,000, but there is an OCR property that is maybe a 30 to 40% gap difference, then you might want to consider that 30 to 40% project. Why? Because this shows clearly that when there is a very strong gap between two different regions, you have a high chance to profit in terms of the both examples that I shared with you, Whistler Grand and Clavon. So if today you have a budget of over 4 million, you might be able to consider somewhere like in Clementi that you can maybe upsize to even a 5-bedroom. So there's a few options. First one, maybe you have the same budget, but you can get a bigger unit elsewhere, or you can use this to go into another location, slightly lower in price, but still get a 4-bed. All the options is really depending on you and how you want to strategize this whole purchase. So now in the OCR area, there's this project that is still available, is Alta. The 5-bedroom is only at 2,200 plus PSF. The question is that in future, will there be upcoming plots that may have this pricing? I feel maybe there is chance. So that is why we came up with this, to let you understand that there might be a chance that you can even get something at a 30 or 40% difference in the OCR market, as long as you are able to understand where are these projects. But the most important thing today is that when you go into Thomson Reserve, don't be in a situation that you purposely buy because you're scared that you miss out and you don't get a unit there. At that point of time when you're deciding, you have to be very clear. What is this property for? Is it for investment? Is it for own stay? Do I really want to get in? Are there other options that I can be open to so that I can pay at a lower price in terms of the gap in pricing, like what I showed you previously? My biggest concern with the buyers is that when we tell them not to go in, but they still go in because they are emotionally attached to the property. Why I say that is because previously I had a buyer that was looking at Cambridge Hill Residences and our queue was really quite at the back. We waited for the whole day and what he got was a 1-bedroom premium unit facing the pool at one of the highest price in Cambridge Hill Residences. I still remember very clearly at the point of time when I told him at the booking table, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I asked him so many times, but he still said yes, he wanted to go ahead. Fast forward to today, when I sold the unit for him, honestly, that price point really wasn't very attractive, and after the taxes, he didn't really make much of it. So this really gives me a very good experience that sometimes when we are in this situation and we cannot think clearly, we do make decisions that is out of the way and it will hurt us going forward. What I'm trying to say is that why would they buy even at this price? Because at that point of time, when you are emotionally attached and the product is right, I just want to get a piece of it, I just want to go in, I will just buy. And this is the problem that we see on the ground is facing a lot when buyers are not clear-minded when they are going for the booking. Just like for example in Thomson Reserve, definitely there will be an oversubscribed issue in terms of this project itself. And if today your queue is not so good, there is a very high chance you might also be in this situation where you are making a decision that is not clear-headed. So if you want to go into Thomson Reserve, really do make sure that you are clear and you know what you are getting yourself into before you book the unit, because this is definitely a very good project. But to go in and be able to exit, there is where the biggest problem still comes in future if you want to profit. Okay, with that, I end my video for today. This is Thomson Reserve and this is my WhatsApp and my Telegram community. If you have any burning questions or any unclear things that you want to understand more for Thomson Reserve, do WhatsApp me directly and get in contact with me so I can help you to decide which are the better units that you're looking. If you ask me honestly for Thomson Reserve, I feel that 3,000, 3,001 PSF should be a hard cut off for your unit itself, because in that PSF range, there is a lot of other options in the market that you can consider. Like for example, I mentioned Oriole in the CCR, Union Square 2006, 2008 PSF, or even Elta, the 5-bed at 2002 PSF. These are some of the opportunities that you can take advantage of so that you don't have to pay such a high price and you get a bigger size in terms of the layout itself. But if today you manage to get a very good Q number that your PSF you're entering at 2.5 to 2.7, then definitely you should go ahead with the purchase, because Thomson Reserve is definitely a good project that everyone is waiting for, and there will be a very high chance it's also much easier to sell in future if you have the right layout and at the right pricing. So with that, I end my video analysis for today. Do ask me any questions if you need, by WhatsApping me or join my Telegram community. Thank you.